Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Silver Tears Tarot, and welcome to today's reading, which is kind of a continuation of yesterday's extended. So, if you saw yesterday's extended, yesterday's reading was about your your person and kind of why they manifested you. We looked into the nature of the relationship and we saw that it was really all about the lessons. So we looked into the lessons that you guys were learning right now, as we got into the extended, as well as what that bridge would look like. What the bridge looks like for you to get from where you are today to that place of being prepared for reunion. What would that look like? And so that was what yesterday's extended was, which leads now into today's reading. And one of the questions that we received, one of the questions that I'm putting together from a couple of different comments and emails, but it's, how are they doing in working through those lessons? Are they ever really going to are they going to work through their lessons on a reasonable timeline, and time is funny in tarot, but let's go ahead and give it a shot and just kind of see how they're doing with their lessons. So this probably deals a little bit more with that bridge that we looked at, the last question in yesterday's extended. So that said, this is going to be a general reading, and it'll be a general reading for this collective. So we know it won't resonate with everybody, shouldn't resonate with everybody. But if it resonates with you, as I always say, think about subscribing. Think about maybe looking at some of the other messages that have already come through. So let's start with, I thought I was going to go different with the decks, but I think I'm going to do this. I'll use my Stranger Things deck for the main deck. Okay, so we're going to start with looking at the energy around them. We're wanting to cast a slightly wider net rather than just to say what's the energy that they're in today, but just kind of the general energy that is around them, that has been around them, and what they are also perpetuating. Then we'll look into how they're doing with their lessons. We've got the 5 of dice. Okay, so this is, there's a sense of learning, but a sense of struggle. Okay, so we've got the Justice card, a feeling of needing to find balance. Here is something that we've been seeing actually a lot in overall, since I came out on YouTube, we've seen there's this desire for your person to have balance. The fact that there's a considerable struggle around this doesn't really surprise me. This one feels like it's almost communication oriented, but it's like I'm drawn to, in particular, the colors on this card. So the blue around what would be the throat chakra and communication, and then the green around the heart chakra, which would be that emotion and the ability to let emotion flow. Those seem to be the places where the blockage is most challenging. They are having a hard time with the emotions, and then also having a hard time with being able to communicate. And we've seen that where they have a hard time articulating their emotions in a lot of cases. Looking for a desire. There's a desire overall for balance. And then this is the 7 of Scoops. This is really more around investment in themselves. They want to do something that they can look back on. So it's challenging because they want to do something that they can look back on and say, okay, this is what I've done. This is what it's all about. This is what is most important to me. But unfortunately, they are not feeling like they want to put in the time. So this is a card of investment. This is that earth energy. And it's that card of like the 7 of Pentacles. This is the equivalent of the 7 of Pentacles. It's about investing in themselves, but they don't necessarily want to put in the time. So they also want this balance, but don't necessarily want to put in the effort. It has to do with the struggle that they're feeling over here, because this is a struggle that's around communication, around emotion, like I was saying, but it's also just kind of this almost just wanting to be oppositional. There's almost an oppositional sort of feeling there. Just doesn't want to be controlled. So we have the moon that's come out here in the reverse. They have become aware of some things, and just kind of in general, they've become aware of some things, but they're not exactly sure how to frame it up. They have a history or memory of the past that just keeps coming back. A couple of them, actually. So some are really the problem with it is it's invoking too much emotion for them to feel comfortable with it. So when they go to seek balance, they have they have trouble dealing with what comes out. And a lot of it is, it's information is coming that would be very useful to them, but it's hard to deal with. So it's that new truth that we often see, but there's um, so much trouble with them actually being able to assimilate those truths into their lives. So that's like that Ace of Swords that we've seen come out in so many readings, really across the year. But that feeling of, so this is a Six of Cups, or it's water energy, and it's a feeling of really a desire to kind of go back to some kind of place that made them feel the best, where they felt the best. They have a hard time articulating that. They have a hard time moving back to it. This is like, honestly, and I know there are as many different stories as there are people out there listening, but this is like they remember a time with you that made them feel completely whole, completely alive, completely happy. It causes emotion to want to flow, and it's like they want to let it happen, but they're unable to give themselves over to it when the new information, or it's not really new information, it never really feels like new information. It feels like when they're reminded of something that they have been conveniently ignoring, such as a level of flow of emotion that makes them this uncomfortable, or just, what causes that flow of emotion, which in this case is you in this example. And I think that's relevant to many of the people. That's not just going to be one or two of you. Sometimes I will say things that, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a great many of you, but that'll actually probably be most of you. Okay, so we have a Knight of Swords, but in the reverse. So this is that tendency to run away. So there's a tendency to be quiet, a tendency to keep things to themselves that they're not quite sure how to articulate, and to be overwhelmed by the emotion. But we're here with the Knight of Swords. It's running away and hiding. I'm drawn back to that example of running up the basement stairs away from a dark basement and feeling like there's something behind you. There's a little bit of that kind of sense to it, and just that frantic needing to run away. It's almost a panicky sort of feeling. I get that sometimes out of your person and their energy, and it's really a culmination of all these other things that haven't made them feel at home, haven't made them feel comfortable, that are happening within their own emotions, and in some cases earlier on in their own lives. Okay, so we've got the Queen of Cups here. This goes right along with this Ace of Cups, and it has a lot to do with the fact that this is a person who has a lot of love to give, even if they aren't quite sure how to give it, how to make all that happen. It's a strong sensation for them. They're very much surrounded by it. So, you find yourself wondering after you see them run away, did they really mean it? And the answer that comes out for me here is they really mean it. Like, they mean it while they're saying it. They feel it while they're saying it. They're not just making this up. They're having the emotion and they're allowing themselves to roll with it. And it feels like vulnerability because it is, but then they turn around and run away because they're made incredibly uncomfortable by this very concept of vulnerability. And that's kind of what's encompassed over here with that blockage around not just the emotions, but communication of that emotion. So here we have the Ten of Wands. Ten of Wands is, this is a burden that they're carrying, but it's like a burden that they're carrying that they bring with them. Very much like a prison that they tote around with them, but it's something that they have the option of setting some of this load down, but it's not, setting it down does not feel like something that they're likely to do. I'm trying to think of a better way to talk about that, because it really does. These are choices, and yet they are disinclined to really ever make the choice that allows them to set these things down. These are egoistic choices. These are things that they associate with themselves that make them feel like themselves. They feel like if they were to let those things go, then they wouldn't be them. But some of them are things that they really should consider, at least just, hey, maybe you reinvent yourself a little bit, because some of this may not be healthy, may not be the best. I mean, you guys have been doing it. You guys have been reinventing yourselves because you look at something and you say, here's a tendency, a habit I see in myself that I now realize is not something that works well for me. So you reinvent. You decide you're not going to be the chaser anymore. You are still in that position, but you're not chasing. That's a lot of people in this collective are the chaser in the runner chaser dynamic, but they aren't really chasing. So I'll tell you one other thing. Look, this is that same person that runs away from the thing in the basement, will turn around to make sure that you're still chasing. So be aware of that. And that is part of kind of what's clinging to them and hanging on to them with this ego and identity. So there's a big ego component to that. But they've got this love that wants to shine through. And so that's why when you see it, it really is that they believe what they're saying. Okay, so let's go back to the question. Now that we've seen a little bit of the energy around them, really just how's it going with the lessons? We know basically what the big picture of the lessons is just from not just yesterday's reading, but from all of the readings. It's very consistent. The lessons that come through yesterday in that extended, we saw, well, here are some of the ones maybe they're working on right now. But I feel like for this question, we're backing up a little bit farther and just saying, of all those lessons that they're looking to learn, what does that success rate look like? Is it going to be everybody? Is it going to be quick? Is it going to be it's right around the corner? Is it okay, so we have 9 of spokes, 6 of strands. Let's see what else. I feel like one more needs to come out here. Now, the 6 of strands comes right out off the top and tells you, yeah, they're going to be quite successful. 9 of strands says it's going to be a while. Okay. 6 of spokes says they can't get you off their mind. So this is very similar energy to the 6 of cups. And it's a little bit different though, because it's got a heavy fantasy element. Or I'm sorry, it's a 9 of spokes, but it's still got that that feeling, and it's got that fantasy element to it. One of the things that I would say here is, so the 9 of spokes, theoretically, it's like there's a veil or some sort of barrier between what they want and how they're able to perceive it. So, okay, I'll tell you what this reminds me of. That force field that is around that third party. Okay, so we've talked about this before. There's a third party that's involved in this situation, whether it be somebody at your person's house, somebody at your person's work, maybe it's work itself. They basically they enter into this environment, whether it's their home, their work, wherever, and they are incredibly distracted all of a sudden. They can't function the same way. They don't make decisions the same way. They are, it's like there's a force field around this that makes them make different types of decisions. And it's like they're seeing what they want, but through the powerful force field. And I feel like that's kind of what has to happen. So with this third party, even if it's, hey, this is a job that's going through a rough patch and they're having a dysfunctional relationship with it and it needs to be sorted out, and it will be sorted out. So that's a fine thing. I guess the question that I would have though is, you know, what does that look like on the other side? Once they sort some things out, what does it look like on the other side? Are they able to get past that force field kind of feeling? Or if they decide they're in a marriage and they want to try and make it work, what does it feel like when they get to the other side of that? I don't get the sense that this force field ever completely goes away or stops impacting them. I feel like they learn to get through it a little bit better. And so this is a person that's being able to interpret the world outside and around them increasingly well. I do feel like it takes a little bit of time. I see that because I feel the resistance associated with this 9 of strands. But with the 6 of strands, it's like, you know what? This is going to take a while maybe, but it gets there. We saw evidence that it would take a while in yesterday's reading, and we've seen evidence of that. This is somebody who is going to learn their lessons, though. So for the person who asked the question in the comments about, hey, we're working really hard, is this person ever going to catch up? Are they ever going to get to where they need to go? The answer is yes, they are going to get there. The question I have is around the time, though, because with the amount of resistance that I feel here, it feels to me like it could take a little while, and I would wonder, is that going to be quick enough for you, or are you going to say, hold on, I figured out some things, and I'm not going to stick around for this. I'll be available to talk if you want to come back. But, it's like that advice that you've gotten so many times here recently on this channel about not necessarily walking away from them or turning your back on them. It's about redirecting some of your energy in a direction that allows you to branch out and balance yourself a little bit. So that's what's going to be. You'll have the time for that here, but I definitely get the sense that they do prevail against these lessons eventually. And the question is it fast enough? So we've got the Prince of Discs that's come out here that says they've got lessons to learn. This is reiterating that things are going to be slow. They're not feeling super confident about things. Prince of Discs in the reverse, Knight of Discs in the reverse, but Wheel of Fortune in the upright. So things are changing. They're not being super consistent. So the Wheel of Fortune says change. The Knight of Discs in the reverse says they're not being very consistent about their speed. There's a lot of stopping and starting. It's got reiterating this lack of confidence that we feel over here with the Prince of Discs. So there are lessons to be learned. They're not feeling real confident about it. They're not moving very quickly. This could indeed be too long for you. It could be, I'll see you around. You could decide that you want to go ahead with your next steps rather than wait for this to pan out. Although if you're kind of redirecting some of your energy, you're never really shutting the door. The first time that advice came out, the way that it was phrased was often leave the door open so that they can walk through it, but don't watch that door for them to walk through it. It's a matter of this is letting go of the attachment to the outcome of the situation, which perhaps strangely, but not necessarily strangely, has a tendency to bring them back. Has a tendency to bring them back because it magnetizes them back. When your energy starts to come away from them or to redirect and not feel like it's coming toward them as much, then they're drawn your way because it's a little bit of like a vacuum. When you start moving this way, they start chasing. So we have the Princess of Wands in the reverse. This is, it feels like this is them trying not to look at the situation, but what it is them trying not to think about the situation because they are incredibly drawn to you, but it feels complicated and they're trying to avoid complications. Okay, we also have a Knight of Wands in the reverse. They're not able to, once again, we see this yesterday, we see it pretty much every day. They have so much magnetism around you that they have a very hard time walking away, even though that's what they feel like they want to do. Princess of Discs here, again, with them not feeling especially confident. They're not feeling confident. They still have a lot to learn. This is actually the card of the learner, or in this case, the teacher, oversight from the teacher. They're not in a place here where they're feeling receptive. This is someone who's very much trying to stay away from the truth of the matter. It's like that Ace of Swords in reverse that we've often seen. But they also have that tendency that they want to come back to you. They want to come back and sweep you off your feet, and that's what the fantasy is all about. So they're like, I know what I want. It's right over there. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to take this and I'm going to do it in spontaneous and amazing fashion. But there's actually a lot that's in the way of that. The energy is still there, though. I'm over here talking about jumping into something new and daring, and I'm holding the Fool card, not even looking at it. But that's kind of, it's in their energy, but it's what's threatening them from solving these issues, because the issues that we see that they're going to solve them. So the answer to the main question, are they ever going to get there, is yes. However, we see an awful lot of things here that make it seem a little bit like it's going to take a little bit more time. Lack of receptivity to the lessons being the most significant thing. Part of it is because they don't know they're learning, and then part of it is because they're not inclined toward that. Everything looks really afraid to them, or scared to them. They're feeling afraid, and it's easier to just kind of run away from it and make excuses, honestly. And I'm not even saying that this person is heavy on making excuses just in their daily life, but this is the situation that really they have a hard time with. They have a hard time making sense out of it or deciding the right way to go. So the answer is yes, they're going to solve it, but the question is when. And it doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be on a timeline that is satisfactory to you. However, if you're taking that advice and kind of redirecting your energy to something that, and it could be satellite. So We a long time ago when we were talking about redirecting some of that energy, some of the question was, do you want to redirect it into maybe something that is associated with them, reminds you of them, but isn't about them. So you write to cope with your situation with them, and maybe you redirect some energy into writing a book. That was an example that I particularly enjoyed that came out when those messages first started coming out. So we're before we get into this, I think we're going to get into this a little bit more deeply in the extended to say what exactly does this look like. A couple of things. This feels like them, this Fool card, it feels like them reaching out but not being prepared for what they see here, or not being prepared for. I almost want to take a couple of these cards and put them together. So it's either this one, this one, this one, and this one. And we'll ask the question, well, what's happening with that? Where they've got a lot of fear around and feeling not very confident and yet wanting to jump into something. So we'll ask that question, kind of how does that turn out and what you can expect around it. Expectations are a tough thing to ever really define because we're going to have people's free will into it. But I guess you look to see the direction the energy is going, and that's what gives you an idea. So we'll look at that, and then I also feel like understanding a little bit around this sense of love along with this sense of blockage. So I think I'm going to take this card, these cards, and some combination of these cards, and then I'm going to grab another deck, and that's where we'll go. But before we do that, let's look to see that question that I always like to ask, which is, what exactly should you be focused on based on what we see here in the rest of this? So this is kind of, we look at your lessons in every reading because this collective is so very focused on figuring out what comes next, figuring out how to solve the issues, figuring out how really to approach these lessons, that I like to make sure that we talk about it every day. Okay, so we've got the Four of Dice, we've got the Emperor, and we've got the King of Dice. Okay. All right, so you are like riding a razor's edge in this energy. I didn't specifically ask for your energy, but it kind of has to come through in order to answer this question. You're in a transitional phase, and like I was saying, you're kind of riding the edge, and it's around how you're going to take on your next step. So are it's like you're able to make tweaks to your adjustment or to your approach at this time. But there's a tendency for you to take a lot of things into account and have them not necessarily be the right things. So when you get down the road a little bit, you say, oh, I wish I'd considered some slightly different things. I considered some things very important in making this decision that I now no longer consider important, and vice versa. Um, Probably though, this is just a matter, it feels like a matter of slowing down. Let's see what else wants to come out for this, because it feels like you're hard on yourself, but that it's not really deserved. Okay, so Princess of Cups, that's got like a delicate air to it. Okay, Eight of Wands, energetic movement. Eight of Cups, sadness, retraction, and the Empress. It's like you're in a chrysalis kind of situation, or you're moving toward that. So I was talking about you being on the edge. This feels more transition-y with this Empress. And okay, so do I? No, I don't want that one. This feels more like a transition type of situation where you will. Um, this is finishing inner child work that you've already started, is honestly what this is. So you've already identified some things that you're working on in yourself, but you're still in the process of working on those. So this is you getting to a place of more completion, more healing, more completion, not just of the lessons, but within the self. So all of a sudden, this Emperor energy that has you kind of trying to control your situation, or trying to maybe be a little bit, you may see yourself as slightly overbearing in the decisions about how you're going to move forward. Are you trying to hit the planning cycle too hard? Said, maybe you've never said that ever, but it's just kind of a There's something that's slightly out of balance here, that allowing yourself to kind of fall into these lessons will create more of a balance in you than you might even realize. You've already done some work in a really wonderful direction. This feels like that Three of Wands in the reverse, where it's a perception that you haven't done some things that you need to do to prepare yourself, but you've actually satisfied the vast majority of the prerequisites. This sadness, though, this is like an Eight of Cups and a feeling that you've lost some time or missed some time in looking for the thing that truly makes you happy. Um, I feel like it's a perception, and that this is going to fall into place as you're working through your lessons. There's something that hasn't happened yet, but there's an urgency lit, like a fire lit under you. And it kind of feels like it's not actually as urgent as it feels. So give yourself the grace when you feel like you're falling behind on something. Think about and check into whether it's really critical that you deliver it as quickly as you're trying to deliver it. Is it what you wanted to do? Is it your intended um, result, or is it something that you can actually bring it to a different level and not have to finish as quickly, or something like that? You might have more flexibility in a timeline. That's kind of what's coming out for me. Princess of Cups is that delicate sort of feeling that I was talking about earlier. This is reinforcing the feeling for me that there's an inner child feeling here. I think that you're working through some things that you're most of the way done working through, but you still have some work to do there. Okay, so we've got the High Priestess, information coming to you, but not necessarily that you're going to know what to do with it just yet. But you got the Prince of Wands here. So the Prince of Wands it's almost like, so it sounds like it feels like the idea of riding someone's coattails to get to the top, but instead it doesn't actually. Okay, so instead it feels like having the discernment to know which coattails to ride and which ones to just kind of let fly by. Um, and so this is about you knowing when to jump into something and when not to. And so this is something that you're going to want to focus on given this, because this is around, do you know when to communicate and when not to? Because with this delicate feeling, you're going to be inclined to communicate with your person, but it may not be the right time. And this is about knowing when to do it and when not to do it, being able to trust your gut. So when you have that situation where you're saying, you know what, I really don't want to be as much of the chaser, and you're thinking, I have a desire to reach out to this person, recognition that that desire is likely to pass. And if you do reach out to them, you're going to be resetting some of your healing and doing away with a little bit of this emotional self mastery that you've been building as a result of working through this inner child effort. So you're encouraged to probably not reach out, although it doesn't specifically say that. It says to be discerning about it. Um, but that to recognize that you're likely to lose some of that healing that you've done if you do reach out. Otherwise, there's a sense of there's a sense of wanting you to redirect that energy to do something different with it, not necessarily to stop with interacting with your person if you have the opportunity to interact with them, but not reaching farther in their direction, and instead leaving that door open in case they are prepared to walk through it, but not waiting for it. You have some progress that you can make right now as you're this is that edge of a knife, almost walking into a new world sort of situation. This is a time where you can affect some changes for yourself, and a lot of them are frankly around this healing. You have the healing around the big three, which is an area where you and your person's healing overlaps a little bit in the area of that healing around the fear of rejection, abandonment, betrayal. Those are the big three. And this is an opportunity for you to work through this in a place that, like, you've already done some work and you're going to get some additional opportunity here. That's what this focus is right now. But this is something that you've kind of already been focused on. It's just a matter of renewing that focus or maintaining it. So we're going to go into the extended. I'll grab another deck and we'll jump into clarifying even further some of these cards, because a lot of times it's like these cards up here give us that top layer of information, and then we dig in. We get a little bit more here, and then we get into the extended and we go, deep dive. And so we're going to deep dive, but using actual cards that are here, like I like to do sometimes. And so that's my plan. The link is down below if you'd like to go into the extended for this one. Otherwise, I will see you again in tomorrow's reading.